Gentlemen, please take your seats. The spotlight is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. I'm Mystery Matt, and you're listening to the Mystery Matt Spotlight Podcast. This evening, we are going to do the first part of a two-parter, but they're kind of split up, so you can get away with just listening to one if you really wanted to. I would suggest coming around and listening to both, but this evening we are covering Marilyn Monroe with Nancy and Sarah. Is it Marilyn Monroe? That's who we're doing first, right? Yeah, okay, I'm getting it right. See, before I said it, I was thinking Marilyn Manson. I'm like, no, that's wrong. That's the wrong Marilyn.
Marilyn.
We need the one that came first, not the one who took the name from.
The blonde bombshell, not the tall,
right.
Skinny, weird guy.
Yeah. That guy creeps me out, and I bet you he's done illegal stuff, too.
He's a little bit creepy. And I think what creeps me out the most is just, like, the way he moves and his, like, contacts. Just, like, creeps me out.
I find his face is shaped funny, but anyways, we're here about the other Marilyn. Does he have a small head? I'm squeezing your hand. No, you're never on mic. In Mother Russia, mic's on you. No? We're not allowed to do Mother Russia jokes anymore. Oh.
We should be on camera.
I've got one, and it does 1080. At least it's a nice camera, you know. But yeah, go ahead.
So the one thing that intrigued me the most, I think, about Marilyn Monroe was the simple fact that she was considered the sexiest woman alive. She was a huge sex symbol, but she was not itty bitty. No. She was 5'5". And I think they said that she was would be like a size 13, 15. So she would be plus size at today's standards. But the way that, like, she just exuded confidence. But as I did more research, you discover the confidence is fake.
Oh, especially since her name's not actually Marilyn Monroe.
Her name is not. She was born Norma Jean Mortensen on June 1st, 1926 in Los Angeles, California. So she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe when she went into acting and modeling, but Monroe was actually her mom's maiden name.
Oh, okay.
She died on August 5th, 1962. Everywhere I looked, it said drug overdose, but there was nothing found in her stomach. They were saying it's barbiturates, but there was nothing found in her stomach, but it was found in her bloodstream, which is weird because the body wouldn't have had time to dissolve all of that quick enough and spread out. So
I don't feel very good. Might have been that bar bitch you ate.
So I'm working off the two things here because, like, my hands were cramping when I was writing, so I'm working off my phone and my notes.
Yeah.
So I need to focus.
Oh, you can focus. I'm just going to make jokes and stuff. You read. I'll do the ha-has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The ha-has?
Yeah.
So Marilyn Monroe
she
was obviously an American actress, a comedian, a singer, and a model. And she became one of the world's most enduring, iconic figures and is remembered both for her embodiment of Hollywood sex symbol.
Right.
So her childhood was not the greatest. Her mom struggled with mental illness. What they're saying now that it was schizophrenia and hallucinations. So her mom was in and out of mental institutions, and therefore she was bounced around from foster home to foster home. She ended up at, I think it was a friend of her mom's, and they wanted to adopt her, but there was another place they thought better. Her mom took her back, and then she ended up back with this family. And then at that time, she was 16. So from the time she was 7 to the time she was 16, she was bounced around to foster homes and was in an orphanage.
So I get the sex symbol thing, but was she in stuff? Like, or was she just a model and that's what she was famous for, was the modeling?
Yeah, the modeling and the acting. She wasn't in any
So in acting, she was doing like stage acting? Or
Movies.
was she movies?
Movies,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, do you know of any movies she was in?
Yeah. There is some down here. I've got
Oh,
them
we're
written
getting
down.
to that?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So when she turned 16, she was still with this friend of the family, and her mom was in a mental institution. They were moving, and they didn't have the option to bring her with because I think they were leaving state. And so I had two choices. She would be back in the orphanage, or she had to get married. So she was married at 16 to her neighborhood friend.
Oh, well.
I
hope it was by choice, but...
So she is said, due to her circumstances, Marilyn wed her neighborhood friend at 16 and was divorced in 1946. So that I figured that out, and she was only married for 4 years. He went into the war, and she stayed here and did and started in modeling. But that's when she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe.
Did he ever come home?
There's not much on that.
Oh.
Like there wasn't, like, she was married to Joe DiMaggio, but not for very long, and there's a lot of different relationships she had, but there wasn't too much about that. What I found mostly was just about her and like the whole conspiracy around her death. So yeah, she married her friend and she modeled. Where I'm looking for the movies, here they are. She liked to read. She owned over 400 books. She listened to Beethoven records, studied acting at Actors Lab in Hollywood, and took literature courses at UCLA downtown. 20th Century Fox gave her a contract, but let it lapse a year later. In 1948, Columbia gave her a 6-month contract, turned her over to a coach called Natasha Lytess, and she ended up featuring in a B-movie called Ladies of the Chorus in 1948, and she sang 3 numbers in that. She did a small part in The Asphalt Jungle in 1950, and put her in All About Eve was 1950 as well, resulting in 20th Century re-signing her to a 7-year contract. And then came Niagara in 1953 and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes in 1953, and that was her most famous movie.
Gentlemen Prefer Blondes?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now, was that one in color, or was it still black and white?
They were all in color.
When did
Were they not in color in the 50s?
I don't know.
No, or was it mid-50s?
It was mid-50s.
She did The 7-Year Itch in 1955. And there was Bus Stop 1956. The Prince and the Showgirl 1957. The Misfits 1961. She was dropped from Something's Got to Give in 1962 due to a chronic lateness and drug dependency. So she was very much into sleeping pills and alcohol.
Where she got into it already.
Because it was actually very commonly given to actresses to keep them thin and keep them calm. Because, women can't be hysterical.
No. Never.
No.
There's drugs for that. There's institutions for that. I seen on the internet, this one guy does these ironic reenactments of the way things used to be. And he's like, "It's all right, I got my wife fixed. She started to go a little loony, so I had her committed.
And got her a lobotomy."
Yeah, and it was like, those kind of things were like, where she might have just been depressed or didn't even menopausal or didn't want to be in that relationship because a lot of those relationships back then were abusive. That was just the way it was, right?
Yep.
And
women didn't have any rights either. So you weren't allowed to open a bank account.
No.
Your husband had to buy everything. You were forced to stay at home. You were allowed to go to school till a certain age, but then that was pretty much it. You were basically taught to read and write and cook and clean.
Yeah.
And that was it. And to obey your husband.
Yeah, another one, he comes up on a kid and he's like, "Hey, kid, aren't you 12 years old? You should be in school. Either that or at the factory." And it's just like, oh my God, child labor. Because, like, a lot of the times you didn't live terribly long either.
Nope.
It was just the way things were.
Yep. I watched a really quick YouTube video, and it was somebody was talking about how a psychiatrist had done a report on Marilyn and talked about all of her psychiatric issues. Now, due to her abandonment and the rough childhood, he placed her at she had bipolar and borderline personality disorder, which makes a lot of sense for everything else that you're going to hear.
Okay, so what is borderline personality disorder?
So borderline personality disorder, they say it's one of the roughest mental disorders to have because you're in a constant state of abandonment. So you either get it, there's 3 ways. It's 1, it's genetic. 2, it's from childhood trauma. And 3, from both. So she had it from kind of both.
Yeah.
So they did find out who her dad was through DNA testing. And his name, his name was Charles Stanley Gifford. There was nothing else on him. The only thing they did say that he had deep family roots in Rhode Island. So it was kind of, her mom was kind of shoved to the side and I think paid off. Because, I mean, if he was in a big, huge family, that was very important. And he had like a fling on a side with somebody that was a little bit nutty. I can't imagine them being like, welcome to our family.
Okay, so where does the last name Mortensen come from then?
That was her mom's. I don't know. That just said that Monroe was the maiden name
of her mom.
So I would have to dig into about her mom.
Okay.
But her mom outlived her. Her mom passed away in 1984.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So Marilyn had a will, an acting will, and she constantly was updating it, and she left quite a bit of money to her mom. Uh-huh. But yeah, due to her childhood and her mom having the psychiatric issues, he placed her with borderline. And so when you have borderline, it's so I could say, hey, Sarah, are we still hanging out tonight? And you say, you know what? I didn't sleep very well. I'm not feeling that great. Can I reschedule? If I had borderline personality disorder, I would think you automatically hated me. I would go into a spiral, thinking you were abandoning me, that you were rejecting me, and then usually would lash out and become verbally abusive.
Oh, gee, I think we've heard of somebody like that recently.
There's lots of rage. It's so there's a disconnect, and there's a lack of control of emotional. There's no emotional regulation. It's unless you do the work, it's very sad to watch somebody live with it. So the constant her jumping from relationship to relationship, not able to have a healthy relationship, makes a lot of sense because her life is like spattered. Like, she had a 4-year marriage and then she was married to Joe DiMaggio, and then there's a couple other smatterings of relationships, but there wasn't much. And then there was her high profile stuff with both JFK and RFK? Is that
Robert Kennedy?
Robert Kennedy, yeah. So she had, and from everything that I read with her relationship with those two, so she had sexual relations with both.
At the same time?
Not at the same time.
Oh, that would have been kinky.
With both brothers. And she often would say to one friend, oh, I'm so in love with Bobby Kennedy, we're going to get married. And then she would talk to another friend an hour later saying that, it's the president. The president's the only one for me. So there was a lot of flip-flopping between the two. Like, I had a really hard time keeping track of which freaking Kennedy she was talking about.
There's a shit ton of them, though, too. So.
Yeah, but she bounced from, like,
the
two. And from what I understand, at the point in time, they were both married.
Well, yeah, JFK, John F. Kennedy, was definitely married.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure about Robert Kennedy. He might have been.
I think he was. Because there's some other stuff to talk about. So her life is quite sad. And so when I don't know, I felt really bad for her to have that kind of a start and then be shoved into Hollywood and been like, here, drink to stay thin and smoke to stay thin and take these barbiturates to keep yourself calm and the sleeping pills so you can sleep. Because that's another thing too with BPD is the brain goes haywire and it doesn't stop. And so your internal monologue is not very nice. And so you can imagine living with that, and then the pressures of Hollywood and like she was very smart to read what she read. Like she had Tolstoy and like all of the old novels that like I can't sit down to read. And it takes intelligence to read those and to have over 400 books for somebody to subject themselves to being what Hollywood deemed they wanted.
Which was the dumb blonde bombshell image.
Yes. And that was her nickname.
Uh-huh.
Very sadly. So, who killed Marilyn? So there was 3 different theories. The first theory was suicide. She did have a couple unsuccessful attempts, which goes along with BPD because they tend to self-harm. Another theory was that she was murdered. And another one was that it was an accidental overdose. She didn't realize she had taken that many. It was accidental. So a lot of people think it's the murder.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of think so too after reading everything, because there is no way, now that I'm done all of it, there's no way in my mind. Like there's no, it was definitely. So I found a Vanity Fair article, and it was, so what was his name? Anthony Summers wrote a book called Goddess, and it's his best-selling biography that he's written. And so what I'm going to read is from, he was talking in that article about his book, and he spoke to over 650 people that were in Marilyn's life to get an idea of her as a person. So her last director was George, I can't say this without giggling, Cukor. Cukor? Cockor?
Might be a weird spelling of cocker.
Maybe. So he worked with her. He was the last director to work with her. And there was a quote from him that says, "A nasty business, her worst rejection, power and money. In the end, she was innocent." Mm-hmm.
Food for thought.
Yes. So Marilyn's relations with both JFK and RFK came close to destroying them politically. Marilyn depended on her phone, so she would often talk about, she often searched for love, and that that's the one thing that we have for life is love. And so she had said I don't depend on anybody, I depend on my phone. My phone is there. So she had 2 different phone lines. So she had a pink phone for everybody else, and then she had a white phone for the people that were special to her and that would call on that. And she was always on the phone. So a week before she died, she worked her phone. She was planning projects. She was making arrangements to fly to New York. She was looking to appear in musicals. She appeared in good spirits, but there seemed to be an underlying mood, especially when talking about love. Out of the blue, she called her Hollywood gynecologist. In the research, I saw that she had 2 miscarriages. And so this is very, very much like a BPD person, where she called to ask the doctor if he was mad at her because she hadn't taken his advice. Her last pregnancy ended in miscarriage, they believe, because of all the alcohol and the drugs. And he had said, if you want this one to go to full term, you need to quit it. And she didn't. So that was a week. There's a lot of different, some people are saying that the housekeeper just woke up on a whim because she felt something was wrong and then found her. Yeah. And so there was a lot of weird stuff. And but this article, I kind of broke it down. So as I read through this, it talks about like timeline. Another phone call was to a longtime friend asking, what can I do about he? He was understood to be President Kennedy. She then began to complain about Robert Kennedy, stating that he cut her off cold, but it was JFK that she couldn't get off her mind. So she went from one to the other.
It seems like she's more attracted to power. And since JFK had the most power of anybody in the United States, obviously she's going to be, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Drawn to it. Not necessarily the money. I think it was more the power.
Well, she came from nothing, and when you're a woman in the 50s, she didn't have much power. And she had to use the sex image.
Money she had, because when she started working,
Yeah,
she was probably one of the most well-paid actresses and models and stuff at that time. So she would have had her own money. So I draw the conclusion that she was probably more attracted to the power.
Yeah. It's just really interesting in the way that she talks to different people about the two of them. Mm-hmm. And you're like, wait, you just said that about John, and now you're saying that about Robert. So if you could just make up your mind so we could all stay on the same track, I'd really appreciate that. Yeah, thanks.
Pick a Kennedy. Any Kennedy.
Any Kennedy.
There's a million of them.
The day before she died, Monroe called her friend Ann Carter. Monroe apparently stated she was in love with Bobby Kennedy and sounded depressed. She told another friend that she was desperately trying to get a hold of Bobby Kennedy and would be reaching out to his brother-in-law, Peter Lawford. And this was confirmed. Peter confirmed that she did reach out to him. Press reports show that Kennedy, so it doesn't tell me which Kennedy, it just says a Kennedy, flew to California the day before Marilyn's death with his wife. Marilyn tried to reach him and at his hotel, but her calls were never returned. Early on August 4th, Marilyn called a longtime friend, Jean Carmen, sounding distressed. Monroe claimed that a woman had been calling her and harassing her. The voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. The anonymous woman kept repeating, "Leave Bobby alone, you tramp, leave Bobby alone." I'm wondering if that was his wife.
Or maybe another side piece.
Maybe.
The Kennedys were
they
notorious philanderers.
Okay, I don't know much about the Kennedys.
Yeah, they were ladies' men, so to speak. Man horse.
Monroe asked Carmen to come over for a drink and have some wine and bring more sleeping pills. Carmen declined, saying that she was busy that day.
Sorry. My tummy
I'm not used to just being the only one talking. This is really weird.
I'm sorry, my tummy just rumbled and it distracted everybody. Like, oops.
After she ended that call, she called another friend. This friend was unnamed. And she stated that she would be seeing the Kennedys that evening. So this is the night before she died. She was found at 3:30 in the morning in her room. Her hairdresser also saw her that day. And this is also really weird. So Marilyn received a package, a stuffed tiger, and her hairdresser said she appeared really depressed and sad and took the tiger and went and sat down and just looked very, very, very blue. And the hairdresser decided to leave as she's like, you're not in the mood for me to do your hair. That's okay. I'll come back another day. Now, the significance with this could be that Robert Kennedy apparently had a real-life stuffed tiger in his office.
I cannot confirm. I know quite a bit about the Kennedys, but I don't know about their decor.
So that was one thing that was the one thing that was said in this article, was that he had that in his office. And they were saying, well, maybe, the hairdresser didn't get to see if there was a note or anything, but she's like, her mood totally shifted and changed. And all of a sudden she was down and depressed. That's when after she received that, that's when her mood went completely downhill. Her psychiatrist saw her at 7 p.m. She called him at 4:30, and she sounded depressed and drugged. When he got to her at 7, she was in a rage. He left shortly after 7 because he had a dinner date. So he gave her some more sleeping pills and off he went.
Yeah, here, have some more pills. Fuck.
Right? But he told the suicide prevention team later on, and this was actually so later on that it was after when they reopened, because they reopened her investigation in 1980. But they still didn't find anything else. So she had recently had sexual relationships with extremely important men in the government at the highest level. She expressed considerable dissatisfaction with the fact that she was the most beautiful woman in the world and she did not have a date for Saturday night. She was expecting to see one of these very important government people that night. However, the meeting was canceled, leaving her feeling rejected. Between 8 and 9, a long-term friend, Henry Rosenfield, called Monroe, stating she sounded groggy, but that wasn't unusual. They talked for, I think he said, between 8 and 9, they just generally chatted, and she had said the same thing to him that she had said to her psychiatrist who had been there. At 9:30, the actress called Sydney, I can't pronounce that last name, Gilleroff. He stated before his death that Marilyn's involvement with the Kennedys was uppermost in her mind in this final hours. Monroe rambled about being surrounded by danger and betrayals of men in high places. She was frantic, stating Robert Kennedy was threatening and yelling at her, that he was reneging on his promise to marry her, saying the relationship was over. Marilyn continued to say she threatened back. This is the part that gets interesting for me. Stating she would go public with their affair and the secrets about what goes on in Washington. She stated they were dangerous secrets. And so another article I had read talked about how John Kennedy would often get warned because he would just share information with her thinking that she was just stupid. And she blackmailed him back. Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And the plot thickens. So, John
Bolanos, a Mexican screenwriter, was told by Marilyn Monroe around 9:30 when he called. This woman was on her phone for the entire day.
She didn't have time to commit suicide.
Right? Will one day shock the whole world. Marilyn ended the conversation by simply laying the phone down, and he was still on the line. And he hung up thinking that she had fallen asleep. At 10 p.m., she apparently called her masseur and left a message, and the message was very slurred. It was so slurred that they couldn't understand who it was, but he recognized her voice. The masseur was out for the evening, and so he didn't get the message till the next day. So in 1980s, so that's where it's left, about 10 o'clock. And she was found at 3:30. Her bedroom door was locked. The lights were on. She was found naked in bed holding the phone.
So that's like, what, 4.5 hours?
Yeah.
Unaccounted for?
Yeah, 4.5 hours unaccounted for. So in the 1980s, investigators were reviewing circumstances around her death. They were blocked by the FBI. The FBI kept a 105 file on Marilyn. A 105 file is designated to anyone who did anything political, especially under Director J. Edgar Hoover, which meaning leftist. Now, I'm not a politician. Can somebody explain to me what you mean by leftist and left-wing, right-wing? Right wing?
No.
I think it's different here than it is there, isn't it? You take over all of this.
I think liberal is supposed to be more progressive and dealing towards freedoms, where conservatives try to work for I don't know, it's really complicated, and I know I don't understand it. I can tell you that right now.
I don't understand much about politics and views and... You got it?
Sarah might have something.
Okay. So, left-wing politics, as described by Wikipedia, so take this with a grain of salt, describes the range of political ideologies that support and seek to achieve social equality and egalitarianism and social hierarchy. Right wing would be the opposite. So you're looking at, for example, you would have Barack Obama on the left side, wanting equal civil rights, blah, blah, blah. And then you have Trump on the other side, basically undoing everything.
Okay.
Yeah, so the right wings are the white trash.
Mm-hmm.
That's not true.
That is biased, but I'm a Obama fan, not a Trump fan. And then you've got your left wings who are, looking for more compassion towards humankind and more equality and just being more open-minded. I guess is probably more open way, or best way of describing it.
Parts of the file were marked SM-C, and that means security matter communist. They were withheld under Category B1, used for foreign affairs matters and national security. So they were unable to find anything that showed her, that showed proof other than what she was saying, that she was involved with the Kennedys and what she knew. But she knew lots, so that's where my hand cramped. So now we're going to go. I had such a hard time.
Just scribbling stuff out. You had a hard time. Sarah adjusted my microphone. She took it from me.
You know what?
No, you can just sit there with your phone and stuff.
No, I was looking at something she said.
Oh, look, the cat came back.
So I'm just looking at, because you said something about the whole Communist Party thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there was interest in, FBI had like interest in Monroe because she was connected to Arthur Miller, who was a director, a playwright, basically. And I think she was being watched by the FBI agents and kept tabs on her because of her association with that. I think there was concern probably during the McCarthy era that she might have been a communist supporter. Because I don't know if you know anything about the McCarthyism.
No.
Okay, so in a nutshell, he was a American politician who went on like a communist witch hunt, so to speak. And a lot of actors and actresses were kind of underneath this umbrella of suspicion of being communist supporters, including Lucille Ball. It didn't help that her husband was Cuban. But I think, that aside, but I was checking to see if Monroe was also being investigated, but it says more so by the FBI than it was under McCarthyism, who was, I think, a state senator, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember. But, yeah, so she was under suspicion for communist support. So that might be why there was issues with her gallivanting around with Kennedys. So, because she could have been trading secrets with other communists.
Yeah. Well, people took her for, that she was dumb.
Yeah. Well,
she was not. And so she was able to get all this information, but unfortunately she was never able to divulge it.
She was silenced.
Well, okay, so there is this person, so it's the Sydney person I talked about, who was an actress, but also a famous hairdresser. And what was this guy's name again? When Anthony Summers was writing this book, there was a couple people that wouldn't talk to him. Now, this person refused to talk to him until 96 when he was preparing his own autobiography on his deathbed. So he took it to almost the grave. So what he did say makes it clear that Marilyn's involvement with the Kennedys was the uppermost in her mind. So he did finally open up. She rambled on about being surrounded by danger, about betrayals by men in high places, and her clandestine love affairs. We talked about that. She wanted to go public and do a tell-all conference. So this is what she told Bobby Kennedy when he said that he was breaking up with her. She wanted to do a tell-all press conference about their lovers' quarrel, the relationships that she had with both Kennedys, and the secrets about what goes on in Washington. And nobody knows her secrets because they're all locked up in all of those FBI files. Now, if she didn't know anything, then there wouldn't be FBI files on her. So that's what makes me think that she knew things and she was killed. In one of the podcasts that I watched about it, they had said, because the coroner found no barbiturates in her stomach, however, it was in her system. So they had said that research that they had come across was that you could give it, what was that word again?
Suppository.
A barbiturate suppository, and it would be an extreme large amount, enough to kill somebody, without it showing up as much in the system.
And it would metabolize faster in the bloodstream.
Yes.
Which is why you hear things nowadays about teenage girls soaking tampons in vodka, because it goes through makes you drunk faster. Ew. Yeah. Oh, is right. Don't do that. Don't do that, people. Don't put it in your butt either. Nothing goes in the butt unless you're into that thing.
So there was also another conspiracy that said that she was killed by the mafia and that the mafia was working for the Kennedys. And they had designed a hidden microphone that was so small it was the size of a grain of rice. So you could, and it would fit right into the wall, like you could put it right into the wood and nobody would see. So what they heard in the last moments before her death that's been recorded was male voices talking. There was shuffling. From what it sounds like somebody's being picked up and put on a bed. And then it goes quiet and you hear like shed French doors and you hear the French doors close. Her bedroom door was locked. The doctor was called. Her housekeeper called the doctor and the doctor couldn't get through the door. Went around to the French doors and they were locked. So she's already, by all the people she's spoken to, had claimed that she was already drugged, slurring, not making much sense. And so you hear, if they're hearing the male voices and the shuffling and her being plunked on the bed, she was found naked in bed holding her phone. And Bobby Kennedy was in the area the day before she died. So if you are these very powerful men in a very powerful family, and you have somebody that you've divulged these secrets to, and now they're saying they want to go public with your affairs, and with all the information you know, and this is about Washington.
That's damaging.
Yes. So
that's what we call motive, folks.
Yes. So because everything is locked, they're not sure whether it was, there's some speculation that it could have been the Kennedys that did it, that snuck in and gave the suppository and left her. Bloop. Or they could have been hired. Because there are reports. Now, I didn't get into this part.
Can you imagine that conversation? Hey, man. Yeah, I heard you do hits. Yeah, I need you to take this, okay? And put it in Marilyn Monroe's bum. Like, what the...
Right?
I just developed an ice bullet. No, man, I need you to put this in her bum. Like, what the fuck?
Well, and if you're already drugged and taking sleeping pills, and you're unable to fight back, it would be so easy.
I'm sorry, the first picture that came into my head was of the second Austin Powers movie, where Felicity Shagwell is trying to put the tracking device in Fat Bastard's
Oh my
ass.
God.
That's what came to mind. I'm so sorry. But all I could picture is like, don't you put it in your butt.
Oh, squeaky. Alrighty.
So I didn't go into the mafia part because you are doing the JFK part. And that was more part of that. But they did have a play in it, but it was more so around the whole JFK association with. But yeah, there's no doubt in my mind.
Was that all your notes?
That's all my notes.
Nice, because you are about to hit 40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Which is good enough to do her. Especially since we're doing 2 back-to-back. And Sarah's fading quick.
So yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that she was murdered because of what she knew and what she threatened to do.
How much cocaine you figure they did? All of it?
Well, probably.
Well, because like they weren't just like politically famous; they were also like stupid famous. Like they were.
Kardashian.
Yeah. Really?
Oh yeah, they were celebrities before he even got into power. They were in, politics and stuff like that. But like, no, they were through Hollywood, around Hollywood, all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, everybody knew the Kennedys.
Because I know that her relationships with them it was very much, there was lots of speculation. And so that her whole famous thing where she sings Happy Birthday, Mr. President, in his speech, he says, thank you for that wholesome birthday song. I'm sorry, but that wasn't fucking wholesome. That was not
wholesome at all.
That was trampy and sexual and like there was
Jacqueline Kennedy was pissed.
Yes.
She was pissed and humiliated.
Yes. Right. So, like, we really need this on camera when we get into doing things like that.
Maybe not the earlier
'cause
stuff, but definitely that.
It's not every day that you look over at your friend's husband and he's rubbing his nipples and pretending to do the Marilyn Monroe Mr. President dance. Next year's Halloween costume.
No. What do I look like, Chris? Oh,
You can be Marilyn.
got him. Hi. No.
Happy birthday.
You get Sarah to, blow the skirt up like I'm on the grate.
Why do I have to blow it up? You can do that with your own ass.
You're the only one that I want looking at my butt.
You don't have a butt.
I know, it's my upper thigh.
The one thing I did want to add is, so she only lived to 36.
36.
36.
She was too old for the 27 club. If
She
you didn't
was.
see that, that was last week. You should
But too young to die, yeah.
Too young to die for sure.
And that's super
What is it,
scary.
37? I'm older than her.
Yeah. So her mom outlived her. Her mom passed away in 1984.
How old was she?
Oh, I can't remember.
Oh, you can't remember? Oh, just can't remember.
Can you press pause?
No.
There's
We're
no
almost done.
pause?
There's no pause ever.
How old was Marilyn Monroe's mom? Like,
She was
81.
81.
Yeah.
Wow.
March 11th.
Yeah.
March 11th. Wow. All right, we all good?
I think so.
Because I'm not sure if all the microphones are still working. It looks kind of weird. Anyways, you guys have a good night, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.